Thanks for tuning into the second episode of Set the Standard. This month's topic explores RegTech. We had the pleasure of speaking with Deborah Young, who's the CEO of the RegTech Association. We also then spoke with Jessie Riddle, who is a Senior International Partnership Manager. It was great to talk to both because we got the perspectives from the RegTech Association, but also with Jessie, we got to see from the international perspective. So what challenges the RegTech companies face across borders, and also how standards can support Australian RegTech companies. Let's jump right in. So the first question we asked Deborah was that in a world of cybersecurity, data privacy and regulation, could she explain to our listeners what RegTech is and its importance today?
It's a range of technology solutions that enable firms to manage their compliance and their regulation obligations with ease. And these RegTech solutions actually add a layer of trust into the system. And that is to protect consumers, which is at the very heart of RegTech. So it's absolutely critical that we seek to operate in a safe regulatory system where trust and confidence is at the core, and this range of technologies that we can unpack a little bit later really add that layer of trust in.
That's great. Yeah, and then in terms of your role then as kind of the CEO of the RegTech Association, what is your role in kind of creating that awareness so that it can kind of blossom in Australia in that sense?
Yeah, so we established the association about 4 years ago to address a dysfunction that was happening because there was no way that this conversation could be elevated to the areas with institutions that it really needed to be. And so 4 years ago, we formed the association as a non-profit. We have 180 members, and my role is to lead the association to achieve its goals and objectives. And they are, put pretty simply, to accelerate the adoption of RegTech and to create a global centre of excellence, and to design strategies, products and services that can elevate that conversation and engage around our mission and our vision. And importantly, we've got a 3-year strategy that we're working towards. We're in the last 12 months of that right now, but they are primarily to advocate and promote for the industry, to improve the flow of investment into the sector, to look at opportunities for export, and to support export potential, and importantly to help our members navigate through this pandemic that we find ourselves in. And over the next 12 months, we have plans to expand our global footprint and also start looking at some new sectors where we believe that RegTech could benefit from RegTech.
That's, I guess, kind of leading to the question of, in terms of Australia and where Australia is at with RegTech. Australia is the third largest RegTech hub behind the US and the UK, and is growing at I think significantly outpacing the global growth. But then I guess the other side of the coin is the investment gap that is there at the moment, like this preventing mainstream adoption of RegTech. So even though there is that global demand, the investment in Australia's RegTech is quite significantly lower. Can you kind of tell us why that is, or why you think that's the case?
Yeah, look, it just comes down to a couple of simple facts. And I think Australia as an economy has been a resources and agricultural economy rather than a digital economy. Yeah. And I think as we are seeing a maturity of the fintech and RegTech ecosystem in Australia, we will start to see some of this shift as awareness is greater. So one of the functions of our association is to obviously advocate for that. But also what we have been seeing the last couple of years is that it could take quite a long time to actually deploy a RegTech solution within an institution. Yeah. And obviously, the longer the sales cycle and the longer it takes to get a solution to market, it makes it less attractive for investors to invest.
Yes.
So what we have been pleased to see, we've just released some research which shows very strong signs that we're seeing more deployments happening. We're seeing greater budgets being allocated to RegTech within institutions, and therefore this sales cycle has been shortening. And therefore, as a result of that, it starts to make it more attractive investment. And so we are starting now to see more investment capital being deployed into the sector, which is very critical for scale ups to get to that growth. So I'd say the signs are very good and promising right now.
That's great to hear, because I guess that kind of leads to my next question in terms of the signs are there and the growth is happening. So is there like a RegTech roadmap? And if so, what does it look like in the future?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I've got no simple answer, but I think it would look a bit like a spaghetti freeway if you could visualize it. A bit of everything going everywhere.
Yes.
So I'll start by saying the first thing that we need to know is that the RegTech universe is not one single set of technologies. It's very diverse.
Okay, yeah.
It can serve all regulated industries, right? So it includes solutions, for example, that might manage anti-money laundering, counter-terrorism, financing risk, know your customer risk, e-discovery. So in other words, within your organization, where is all your documentation? Where's all your digital stuff being stored? And do you have your hands on it? And can you get your hands on it? Things like compliance education is, how are you getting that critical education to your staff, particularly if they're, offering advice to consumers. There's validation software, monitoring software, digital identity. So you can see that it's quite a large plethora of solutions. So to say, is there a roadmap, would be quite complicated. But what I think we can say is a couple of things. On a more granular level, what we're trying to encourage is a global conversation. So one of the first things that we've had to do is actually develop a taxonomy. So a way that we can categorize RegTech, and all the members of our association do belong to a category, and our directory on our website, which is free for anybody to access, you will actually see that taxonomy. And that's really important so that we can have conversations that people have a consistent understanding of what that is. Then I think one of the things in the bigger picture is we've also joined hands with many organizations around the world, and we have MOUs in place in North America, in Asia and in Europe, so that we can be part of a global conversation. So we're staying very close to developments more globally, so that we could get to the point where we could even have something along the lines of a roadmap in place. So I think having a taxonomy is important, keeping those global connections alive, and actually being, reasonably nimble in, welcoming even new parts of RegTech as it emerges into our community and finding a place for it to live.
That's great, because I guess, like you said, there's so many. Because RegTech for us came up when we were looking at anti-money laundering and counter-terror financing, and its importance for financial inclusion. So I guess, like you said, there's so many different functions and applications of RegTech. But again, looking kind of future focused, I know the emerging markets at the moment for your solutions are in healthcare and information and media and telecommunications, and also the financial institution. But I guess looking again in the future, do you see any new kind of priority areas of focus for RegTech?
For sure I do, and we're seeing one emerging right now in workforce management solutions.
Okay.
Why I think that's interesting is that typically RegTech played at the large end of town, so solving problems for large institutions.
Yes.
But here we've seen workforce management solutions can be applied to businesses small and large and help them manage the compliance and regulatory burden of managing the onboarding of new employees. If you think about the life cycle of an employee, there's from the point that they apply for a position, then they're hired, you need to collect sensitive and private information from them, their tax file number, their superannuation fund, all that kind of stuff. So are you using, what are you using to onboard the employee? But then are you actually paying them correctly? And are you able to get them the workplace health and safety information that they might be required to do as part of working for your organization and to meet regulatory requirements? Are you getting them the right kind of training that they need on a periodic basis to actually uphold the license that you might have to operate? And then what about this new world dimension that we now have with the pandemic? Are people vaccinated? Are they ready to come back to the workplace? And what does that mean for an organization? And I don't know that we've fully dealt with all of that yet.
No.
You could see that a workforce management solution may be able to help organizations manage how all of that is going to happen. And I think that is going to be a really interesting space going forward as the whole world pivoted, remotely within days.
Yeah.
Now, as we come back, that's going to be a real challenge for institutions to manage the complexities around that. So I think that this whole area of workforce management solutions is actually going to be really, really interesting.
That's really interesting. I guess it's something that all organizations have to consider coming back, or for their employees coming back in terms of complying with, like you said, people that are vaccinated and what that means. And so it's definitely, like, RegTech definitely has solutions for a lot of varying industries, which is great for you guys and for us. And I guess then in terms of the challenges that you face, so I know RegTech faces challenges during the pre-production, the trial, during the full deployment of production. Do you see standards playing a role in overcoming these challenges? And if so, how?
Yeah, look, absolutely. I mean, I think to revolutionize the way that technology is onboarded, particularly into large institutions, procurement is the number one barrier that is reported by our members. So I would think, and I'm delighted to have been asked to do this today, because I think when we're talking about standards, how great would it be having a buyers and sellers standards checklist to technology?
Yeah,
it would be invaluable to have a standardization of approaches. So large institutions could actually have a standard that might have 20 questions on it. The buyers and the sellers have access to these 20 questions. They know that they've got to meet those as an industry standard. So they're actually prepared for that. And so by the time that they come down to it with each institution, it can simply be the tailoring and some more bespoke requirements. So you could imagine it like a bit of a checklist. And I think it would be super cool to have that. And even if we, had just 50% of the questions answered through standardization, I think that would be awesome, and it would really go a long way into getting this technology sooner and the tools in the capable hands of people within institutions, and put those to work to bring that trust, as I was talking about earlier, back into the system. So absolutely, I do think that standards have big role to play.
Well, that's great. That's great for us to hear that we kind of help out in that way. So I guess kind of just the concluding questions, in terms of kind of stepping away from RegTech and kind of looking more so as you as the CEO, like you've had a great career in general. So in terms of 3 things that you've learned since becoming the CEO of the RegTech Association, what would those 3 things be, do you think?
Look, I think setting yourself a goal and keeping it present in everything that you do. And I think with those goals also comes, measure and assess what you do religiously. And if it isn't working, fix it.
Yep.
Nobody expects perfection from the beginning. You've got to trial, you've got to pilot, you've got to test, you've got to learn, and then, go back. People aren't born believers about RegTech. We need to take them on a journey. And so that's one of the things that I've learned. And it's been very satisfying to see, taking an entire group, a very disparate groups of regulators, institutions, RegTech actually on this journey has been enormously rewarding, but we need to take them on a journey, and people are at different parts on that journey. So that's part of what gets me out of bed every day, I think, and so that's been one of the very satisfying things that I've been focused on over the last 4 years since we established.
Yeah, because I guess that you've got a lot of, even when you spoke with the solutions that RegTech provide, I mean, you've got so many different industries that and like you said, regulators, and trying to bring all these people together. So that's definitely, even itself is a great skill to have as well. And then in terms of, if you could have a billboard that so to say it's in Times Square, it could say anything, but you want for all these millions of people to see it. What would that be?
Wow, Times Square, hey. Let's go large.
Yeah.
I like your thinking. RegTech means that we can see the system.
Yeah.
And this is actually about your mum and your dad and protecting them in all their interactions in their daily lives. They don't need to know what RegTech is.
Yeah.
But it needs to be there to protect them. And I think so. RegTech equals trust is I think what my billboard says, and we need to be able to trust in the system no matter what.
Yeah, I think that's a great, because I think with everything going on and everyone's online and there's so much data and so much information, I think for people to buy into that trust is huge. And it's that kind of, I think that can resonate with a lot of people, just that sense of safety, and that the information is safe, and every interaction that you have online and things like that are safe. So that's I really like that one. But yeah, look, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. And what we'll do is we'll link the podcast up, and I'll put I know you recently, like you said, you released your research there just at the beginning of September, so we'll link that up for people to see. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it, and look forward to seeing all the downloads of our report.
Yeah. Thank you.
A good question, Shannon, and I think I'll begin my answer by quoting something that I actually heard Deborah say on a recent webinar, and that is that RegTech is a global solution that solves global problems.
Yes.
So my take on that statement, and I'm sure Deborah can correct me if I'm wrong here, is that the great opportunity with RegTech is that it can drive efficiencies across a broad range of regulated industries and across the global ecosystem. So as Deborah already mentioned, RegTech, put simply, has the opportunity to drive regulatory efficiencies and economic growth by empowering businesses, be they SMEs or large multinationals, to manage their compliance and risks more efficiently and at a lower cost. So to fully grasp the benefits that are on offer, it is critical that businesses that work across borders can utilize RegTech solutions across their assets in different segments and across multiple geographies. And it's also critical that RegTech providers can implement their solutions across borders without barriers to entry into markets. And that's particularly the case for Australian RegTech companies, as they often need to go global to grow, given their the relatively small size of the Australian regulatory market and the crowded nature of the market as well. So I recently actually read a report on the state of RegTech in Asia Pacific released by Enterprise Ireland that found that one of the key challenges for RegTech buyers and sellers across borders in the region is that there are divergent standards in the various markets.
Yes, yeah. Good.
Yeah, and the report found that non-harmonized standards impacted access to markets for RegTech companies, and it also stated that uptake of RegTech was impacted negatively by a lack of interoperability of the data and systems that are really foundational for RegTech solutions. So this is a really significant obstacle to industry growth in RegTech, and it's really critical to realise that standardisation can limit, lack of standardisation, I should say, can really limit capability for seamless integration with new and innovative applications, which really are what RegTech is based on.
That's it, I guess, because I know, like, I've read that report with Enterprise Ireland, and they did mention the fact that there is that global demand for RegTech, and especially in the kind of the Asian Pacific countries for financial inclusion as well. But I guess there also the kind of other side of the coin is the lack of investment for Australian RegTech companies, and I guess probably one of that reasons would be the kind of lack of harmonization of standards is kind of definitely at the forefront of that. And I guess then how in your view can Start Australia support Australian RegTech companies?
So there's a really good opportunity As I mentioned, standards can play a vital role in the RegTech sector by connecting new technology in the market and by creating trust and consistency. So the opportunity is there for the Australian RegTech sector to work with Standards Australia to shape international standards that foster interoperability as well as innovation. So the international team here at Standards Australia are specialists in facilitating the development and adoption of internationally aligned standards through ISO and IEC. We support industry experts to participate in international standard development and adoption. So a key current focus for us is increasing Australia's engagement in standard setting for emerging and critical technologies to ensure that Australia is influential in setting the standards in these new areas. And RegTech has really been identified as one of those emerging technologies where there's opportunities for Australian experts to increase participation in the international standardization activities of ISO and IEC. So the two key opportunities for Australian industry, the RegTech industry, is the first is for them to drive new areas of international standardization as it relates to RegTech. So work is already underway, for example, under ISO TC 68 on financial services to develop financial services data security and to develop a common terminology for data that is used in fintech. The opportunity is there to engage in similar work, but for RegTech more broadly. And then the second opportunity is for the Australian RegTech industry to engage with already established ICT standards that are already ongoing in international standardization in areas such as blockchain and data standards and cybersecurity. So engagement here will allow the RegTech sector to ensure that standards that are developed on blockchain and data and cybersecurity that really underpin the reg technologies are fit for purpose for the sector.
It's funny because that's kind of what Deborah Young had mentioned, in that sense of it's a solution for various industries, and then what comes with that is it intertwines with other ICT standards, like you said, with blockchain and data cyber security standards. So it's definitely an exciting area for RegTech and for Standards Australia to hopefully be involved in that area. So again, I really appreciate you coming on and giving us an insight, and it's great to see kind of what you guys in the international team are doing and your view in terms of that kind of cross-border perspective. So I really appreciate that. Hope you guys enjoyed our second episode. We just want to thank again Jessie and Deborah Young for coming on and giving us their insight. We hope you enjoyed it and you got something from it, and any feedback you might have, I'd really appreciate if you would reach out and just let us know. But yeah, thanks guys.